This video is going to show you a few shortcuts as you work with factors and multiples. Let's take a moment to get our headers all complete with the date and topic. The topic today is Divisibility Rules. Also make sure that you have your margin set. We're going to be using that left-hand margin more this time than we have before, so make sure you give yourself enough space to write on the left-hand side. The essential question for this video will be, how can I know if a number has a factor of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, or 10? When we look for factors, we are looking for numbers that can be multiplied by other whole numbers to make the number we are trying to find. For example, if we want the factors of 10, we know that 2 times 5 makes 10. So therefore, 2 and 5 are both factors of 10. But what if we are looking at a large number and we don't know where to start in terms of finding factors? There are some tricks to know when a number has a factor of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and even 10. This won't cover all your factors, but it's a good place to start. In this video, I'm going to use the margin on the left-hand side. I'm going to write questions that I will then answer in the main section. Be sure to write what I write. Let's start with the first question. When does a number have a factor of 2? This one is probably pretty familiar to you. Any number that is even has 2 as a factor. Even numbers are, of course, numbers that end in 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. So any number that is even can be divided by or is divisible by 2. Therefore, 2 is a factor. 2 is not a factor of 121, but it is a factor of 2,526. Let's try another one. When does a number have a factor of 3? To know if something can be divided by 3 and therefore has a factor of 3, you need to look at a couple things. You need to first look at all the digits in the number and find the sum of those digits. You need to add the digits together of the number, and if that sum can be divided by 3, then the whole number can be divided by 3, and 3 is a factor of that number. Let's look at an example. In the number 126, the 1 plus 2 makes 3, plus 6 makes 9. 9 can be divided by 3. 3 is a factor of 9, and therefore the entire number 126 is also something that has a factor of 3. A non-example would be, for example, the number 28. 2 plus 8 equals 10. 10 can't be divided by 3, so therefore the entire number 28 is not divisible by 3, and 3 is not a factor of 28. When does a number have a factor of 4? This is an interesting one. If the last 2 digits of a multi-digit number have a factor of 4, then the entire number has a factor of 4 as well. For example, the number 432, I certainly don't know all the factors of 432 off the top of my head, but if I look at the last 2 numbers here, the last 2 digits, it's a 32, and I know that 32 is divisible by 4, so therefore I know the entire number 432 is divisible by 4, so 4 is a factor of 432. On the other hand, 525, the last 2 digits here are 25, I know that 25 cannot be divided evenly by 4. It is not divisible nicely by 4, therefore it is not divisible by 4, and 4 is not a factor of 525. Next up, when does a number have a factor of 5? I bet most of us know this one already, right? If a number ends with a 0 or 5, then it can be divided by 5, and 5 is a factor. For example, let's just pick a number here, 245, right? That ends with a 5. Therefore, it has a factor of 5. On the other hand, if you have the number 321, right, that does not end in either a 0 or a 5, cannot be divided by 5. 5 is not a factor of 321. When does a number have a factor of 6? In this case, you should have already done a little bit of back work, right? And you'll find that if any number has a factor of 2 and 3, then we can also assume that it has a factor of 6. Notice that I said and there, right? It has to have 2 and 3 as factors. Let's take our example of 126. 126, first of all, is even, right? Which means it's divisible by 2. And then if we also look and add the sum of the numbers here, we get 9, which is divisible by 3, right? So we know that 126 has a factor of 2 and 3. Therefore, it also has a factor of 6. However, the number 201, while that does have 3 as a factor, because if I add these up, I get 3, and 3 can be divided by 3 quite nicely. It is not an even number, right? Therefore, it cannot be divided evenly by 2. Right? That means it is not a number that has 6 as a factor, because it's not it does not have factors of both 2 and 3. We're going to skip 7 and 8. You might have noticed when I was listing these out, I didn't mention 7 and 8. They have slightly more complicated steps that you can go through to try to find out if a number has a factor of 7 or 8, but it's a little more than what we're going to do here, so I'm going to skip those, but feel free to try to work through those and look those up if you'd like and come back and share what you know. But I'm going to go ahead and go on to number 9. So the next question I've written here in my margin is, when does a number have a factor of 9? This one is similar to our trick for the 3's, because we need to add the digits. So for the 9's, if the sum of the digits in a number adds up to 9, sort of similar to those 3's, right? We're adding it up. Then 9 is a factor of that number. Let's try a bigger number for this example just to try it out. Let's try 43,785. If I add the digits of that number up, I get 27. And I know right now that 9 is a factor of 27, and that tells me already that my entire number has a factor of 9. But if I didn't know that, I could keep adding, and I could say, okay, well, my 2 and my 7 from 27 makes 9, therefore 9 is a factor of 43,785. My last tip probably goes without saying, but we're going to just answer the question, when does a number have a factor of 10? A lot like 5's, I'm sure most of you know about the rules for 10's. If a number ends in a 0, it's a multiple of 10, and therefore 10 is a factor. Let's do a quick example. 740, right, ends in a 0. It is a multiple of 10, therefore 10 is a factor of 740. And of course, a non-example would be 852. That does not end in a 0, and therefore 10 is not a factor of 852. So the essential question for this video was to figure out any tricks or how we could know when a number has a factor of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, or 10. So hopefully those are some tricks you can use. Remember, you can always just test things out, but this is a nice shortcut that we can use if we're looking at a number and thinking, oh, where do I start? So hopefully that'll help you out.